So, Swarnim, welcome to CTO Confessions. It's great to have you on board.
Thanks, Daisy. Thank you so much.
Tell the audience a little bit about yourself. Who are you? What do you do? What kind of areas of work do you work in?
So I'm Swarnim. I have worked as a software engineer, then as a technical lead. Even I have done in the QA automation work as well at some point to make the things easier for other people, for myself as well, because I was repeatedly doing the testing manually. Then yes, I transformed my career towards the management side, and I went to a engineering manager, worked as a senior engineering manager, managing managers, managing teams, scaling the team, technical, architectural design, system design, working very, very closely with even VP. And also I have worked in a startup where I have worked very closely with the CTO and CEO of the company, including COO. So yes, I have worked with a big companies name and very, very small companies. I have also worked as a director of engineering, where my expertise, of course, work very closely with the C-suite, making sure, you obviously think about the company business objectives, how to get revenue, how can we make sure we have a profit, plus also making sure we also stick with what's our goal and objective looks like.
Wow. And I'm curious around that aspect because often people think that technology leaders are all about technology, but there's a very important business side to it. And I've heard this theme quite a lot from leaders that I've worked with and also people that we've had on this podcast. So is that something that you've had to learn on the job, or is it something that you actively had in your learning experience, your learning journey at university or college, at the business side of business?
That's a very good question, TC. So no one to be honest, when you do your degree from the college, I did my computer science degree. So for me, business is pretty new. I've never worked in business. I have always been a technology person. But when you work very closely with the team, with the business objectives and goal, you eventually, start learning what the business needs are. How can you make sure you have profit, revenue shares and stuff like that. And also, how can you make sure you also think about company profit, but keeping also product delivery, all those things going, also your team motivation, team collaboration. So I feel like when you are in the company and then you learn when you are in the job itself, experience teaches you. And that's what happens for me. If you'd have asked me this question, maybe 10 or 11 years back, or even 10 years back, I would have said, I'm a technology person. I'm a geek. Literally, I just want to sit and code, but if you ask me now, I feel I'm both, I also think about the business plus also the technology side as well, to a more scalable solution, but also making sure business is profitable and also be
That's really good to hear. On the note of being a geek, so audience knows this, and we've kind of mentioned it offline, is that I used to be an electronics engineer and software engineer, and I always joke that I'm a geek that managed to de-geek, but I don't think we ever de-geek. I think we're always geeks. There's always that geek in there, and we just morph it into kind of different areas and whatever. So and that learning on the job, I mean, I must be quite challenging, but also there's something around having an interest in the business maybe opens up the door of you getting into the positions that you have. So, maybe for some of the aspiring engineers out there that are listening to this conversation, what would you say if I said, well, if you show an interest in the business side of stuff, that's probably going to create more of a doorway into positions of responsibility and leadership?
Yes, and that's absolutely, I want to say to every engineers, that if you don't know the business, sorry, you can't develop product, because how you are going to be expected to develop anything if you don't know what your business needs are, just developing a feature does not, it's not solve the purpose what, you are being hired in a company or you're working in a company. So I feel you need to know the business, what your business is, what your business does, what in 6 months time your business is inclined towards, what business is doing. I think that even though you're a junior engineer or a mid or a senior or a leader, everyone should be aware of your business, what the business needs are.
That's good. And I think there's something around learning the language of business because it's very different to the tech world, and the tech world has its own language. I remember a previous leader that I was working with, and they actually told me, they instructed me to go and do a accounting for non-executives. So I would learn the language that they were using in the meetings and stuff like that, and I found that was really quite useful because it opened up my vocabulary, and also the vocabulary, the language opens up as the kind of discussions you need to be having, these the terms that they use. So yeah, I encourage people to do that. So that's a really good take, I think, for our audience. And you also mentioned around, you've worked for very small companies and very large companies. Okay. So what's your preference? What do you enjoy the most?
Uh, to be honest, I have worked with many big companies, if you name like Motorola, Samsung, Adobe, Tesco. But I felt when you work in a smaller company and if you really, really want to learn and grow and you have, I would say you have time as well, like, when you are in like 20, 25, even, 30s, and then 25, of course, like, when you think of like, the only focus is like, I want to learn many things that I can learn in this particular, time frame. That's what the mindset I had. So when I joined big company, I found that there was a lot of like processes I need to go through. There was a lot of hierarchical, like, structure where I had been given only one step of the feature to develop, like in one section. Um, and obviously, higher management used to take all the decision, my manager, my lead, and stuff. But when I worked in the smaller companies, I felt like I was doing absolutely everything. I was being like, allowed to just explore, suggest a best possible solution for the company, for the team, and then come up with the ideas, come up with the suggestions. It's not that it's not there in the big company, but the whole process takes time. But in the startup or in the small companies, you get through that process very, very easily. And that's the difference, I would say. So working in the small and big companies, I, as an engineer, it only makes difference how much time you have in, to learn and grow. If you really want to learn faster and faster and grow faster, with your ideas, putting it in the table and maybe, having present those ideas, I think that, that's what I learned and that's what I had that exposure by working in the startup. As I said, I have worked literally for everything. You can say security, vulnerabilities problem, pen testing, all the engineering work. I've worked as a DPO of the company at some point. So kind of like, I have done absolutely everything like cyber ISO. So yeah, you learn a lot being in a startup.
Yeah, you strike me as somebody that sees the opportunity and kind of takes it. You're hungry for it. I've met people on my journey around this, is that you see the opportunity and you go for it. So maybe this inspires other people out there. If you see a gap, try to fill it. I know this has served me very well in my journey, and you're better for it. Doesn't mean you have to stick with it. Just give it a go. So there you go.
Yes, I mean, I feel like never hesitate to present your ideas. Just don't run away. Like if you have an idea, just present it. What will happen eventually? Like maybe it's rejected. That's fine. You have that satisfaction. Okay, I presented my idea. I have said that what is gonna be good maybe in another 1 or 2 years time from the tech stack or from the product perspective as well. And maybe there can be a time where your idea would be again rethink by someone from the leadership team or someone from your team itself. So I think do not hesitate to present your ideas. Do not hesitate like in what you have in your mind. Just say it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and then apologize later if it was not the right thing. But, like I live by that, and it sometimes gets me into little pickles. But hey, it makes life interesting, and also you move forward. So I've got some questions around technology and leadership that I've got lined up here. So we'll go in that order if that's okay with you, because I'm really curious around some of your experience, because you've got a wide breadth of companies that you work for and things that you've done. So on the technology questions, I've got a nice one here for you. Now, you might have heard of the thing called AI. Okay, it's kind of mentioned once or twice. Understatement of the year, and automation. These are buzzwords that kind of fly around. I'm really interested in your experience of actually implementing and using these in the space for business outcomes, not just for fun. Okay, for business outcomes.
If you ask me, AI AI and automation only make our roadmap if it actually removes the pain.
Mm.
So I feel you don't want to just use the AI for the sake of using or for the sake of like fun, unless it's solving the real problem that we have, of real pain we have. If I say about myself, I'm allergic to AI for the sake of AI. But what I mean, uh, um, if it doesn't make the customer faster, or I would say save us from doing some boring manual tasks, it does not go to the roadmap at all. And that's what I was really clear for all the jobs that I have been in, that, you know, use AI only when it makes the customer experience faster, or it makes us some of the manual work which we are doing really faster, so that obviously we can be like excelling in our delivery. It basically, if I'm saying in very funny terms, if it cannot pay a rent, it can't live here.
Yeah, all right. Okay. I like it. I like that. So, so let's say, for example, I'm a CEO, because the businesses are very up on it, and they tend to follow trends. They go through the hype cycle, and we get drunk on the hype cycle. So, if I was a CEO and said we need to add more AI into the business, and you go, well, what would you say to me to kind of tone down my blind enthusiasm for the?
And that has happened before, because CEO of the company wanted to be an AI driven company. Like they say, oh, we need to have AI. Today there is boom about AI everywhere, Swarnim. As a technology leader, you need to have AI. And I said, wait. Need to have AI, or there is a necessity to have AI? There is a difference. Let's analyze the difference. Let's find the difference. And then let's work on this. First of all, AI is not like just do like this and you can have an AI in your in your platform, or can just integrate AI. You need to have a proper brainstorming or thought process before integrating AI into your platform. First of all, why you need AI? What's the problem it's solving? And also having AI, what's the customer experience looks like? Does your platform needs AI at this moment? Will it make the customer experience bad, or will it be having you get more kind of like customers and revenue? So I always have this discussion with the CEO. Just for the sake of having AI, do not have AI if you really need. And that's why here people make a mistake. They just want to have AI in everywhere, and they say, oh, we are AI based company. Right, but are you solving the real problem? Having AI is increasing your cost. You are spending so much money in AI, but are you getting that, in return?
And I think, to your point earlier on, which is around solving pain points in the company, it's interesting how sometimes when we get into these hype cycles, we inject pain into the organization. It doesn't, all change has a painful experience. It can vary, but I think if you go, as you say, but go blindly, you don't know what pains you're going to get, and they're probably not going to be particularly pleasant ones. And disappointment, which is a pain in itself.
I'll give you an example, TC, very quickly. So in my past company, we had integrated AI to help us writing some kind of a unit test integration set and some kind of a code for us, because we thought, okay, let's use AI. And we started using AI, and we found that the code that was written in AI with AI, that needed more review time before you can even put it into the production. So we were spending more time reviewing the code. Like if some engineers would have gone and written the code, it would have taken like literally half of the time. So I felt like we need to have some kind of maybe set up a rule, set up a guardrail. So have a thought what you really need AI for, and then use the AI wisely,
Wise, wise. Listen, there's wisdom here. Okay, so that's really good. Thank you for that. And so, putting that aside, what are the things in your engineering toolkit? What technologies, frameworks, and practices do you rely on most? What's your backbone?
I mean, if you talk about the engineering toolkit to anyone, then um, I would I would say we always think about fancy framework, like you have all where like AWS, because there is a AWS kind of like said we have like all the new technology like React. if you don't have React Remix next, oh my God, your company is not like, having a fancy framework. No, our best tools aren't fancy framework. Just, I want to make it very clear to all the people who's listening to this. They are boring, like things like logs, metrics, tracing, and some kind of a feature flag. That's what I think the engineering toolkit should be. Um, Framework change every year. Like last, if you ask me, like 7 years back, there was Java, JavaScript. There's no concept of React, no concept of Node, TypeScript, Remix, Next. So framework changes every year, but debugging at 2 a.m. never goes. So you will always be doing it. Whatever the framework you have it in place. So I would say observe what is the real MVP looks like. Everything else is just a library that you need to just integrate that library, and that will make sure, and just keep it in mind, that will replace in every 6 months. Every technology become outdated in every 6 months, anyways. So I would say takeaway from here is that if you want to talk about the engineering toolkit, there are boring things like logs, metrics, feature flag, tracing. How do you monitor your system, all those things.
Yeah, and I think you've touched actually. It's really interesting actually as you describing it. I thought of a toolbox as such, and sometimes we in the toolbox we have our regular tools, screwdrivers, pliers, even the hammer, and then we have these specialized tools that we probably use once in our lifetime, but it's a specialized tool, and I think there's something around that is really show gratitude to the core of what we need, and I think the next question is covering what you described, which is, in today's tech space, what's the one skill every engineer must have to thrive? And I think, so for me, when you said that, and when I read that, is the debugging, okay? Because I think debugging is an art, and I really miss it because I've kind of left the tech space, and I remember those 2 a.m.s in the morning trying to follow the variables, breakpoints and what have you. Hopefully the audience know what I'm talking about. And, it was painful, but that feeling of just getting under the cover, was brilliant.
Definitely. And to answer that as well, like every skills every engineer needs, um, I think the superpower here is learning without having any permission. So you need not to take permission from anyone. Just learn without waiting for the permission. That are skills every engineer need at this moment. New tools drops every Tuesday. AI rewrites like half of the internet. Like literally at the moment, half of the internet is written by AI. And it changes every 6 months. So if you are curious, I would say, and willing to explore, you are a winner already. You win already. You will learn. If you are waiting for training programs, if you are waiting for someone to come and teach you, good luck. You will still be waiting, for that forever.
Yeah, I think that's great. And I'm really glad to say I have that superpower, okay? I do have that superpower, so I am super, okay? And hopefully other people out there are gonna recognize that. So, and I think you're right, we are the masters of our own kind of destiny, and we just get hungry for it. I watch stuff which is completely irrelevant to my kind of core career, and it always seems to color my space. In fact, actually, as a bit of a segue, I sometimes listen to TED Talks that are not related to my field, and they always inspire me, even though they're not related to what I work in. I just think, oh, that's got me thinking differently. So yeah, I'm gonna high five that suggestion there because I think it's great, and then you can feel like a super person as well, a super man or woman or whatever.
That's like, to be honest, you see, like that's what happens. Like, if I say about myself being a woman, I I have seen a lot of ups and downs. Like, first of all, like, women then become a mother. When I became a mother, I always thought, oh, if I'm gonna be going on a maternity leave for like a year, am I going to be like losing that time for my career development? Am I going to lose the time to obviously excel in my career? I can tell with my experience, I haven't lost any time. I literally got promoted even though like I was on maternity leave and came back the next day. So if you are, again, if you have that particular zeal, if you really want to learn without like again waiting for someone else's permission, if you really want to keep up to date, what is the market technology, what's the looks like, I think you can excel. No need to think about taking even a break. Even though you are on break for 2 years, you still go into the market, you still go and find a job, you'll still get it if you are up to date with the
Excellent. I think that's really good. It's got me thinking actually for in service of other tech leaders out there, because what we want to do is spot these people. And sometimes we're so busy doing stuff, we don't spot them. Um, and So what advice would you give to tech leaders to spot those people that do have that superpower? It seems like a bit of an obvious question, but I just want to explore that with you.
It is tricky because I mean, what I did, I'll tell you my experience with my past companies. First of all, diversity is it's a big problem in every company. Like, technology is a main dominating, area. Uh, it's really like, so what I did, like, if I had the same thought, like, whatever I'm facing through, a lot of women would be doing the same thing. Like, they are taking a break and then they say, oh, their career is over, or they are just going to go like, back kind of like in a new career path. So I, I always want to give chance to the women to maintain the diversity in any company. So I say every leader should, first thing they should always be, thinking about how can you be diverse. I'm not saying it's only women, but also like if you have more women in your team, think about having a diversity. Have someone like, men or someone like, who really, really you think that can um, add the value in terms of their personality. Maybe they would need some kind of like, I would say the chance to work in a company. So if you have to again like think about the trade off, and if you think that the other person whom you really really like, the person is good. Or do a trade off, like there can be like the person can be strong and weak in certain area. So I think it's all about like giving opportunity to the people, keeping diversity in your place, and also like there's a couple of forums I have joined. I am in the women tech lead, I'm in the women who code, I'm in the London tech leaders chat, like forum. So yeah, go to that forum to see there's many leaders, they would be saying that we have taken a break from the career and we would we are seeking for this particular opportunity. So I think yeah, that would be enough.
Thank you for bringing that into space. Actually, I'm going to go off piece from my questions for a second, because I think this is an important topic. We don't get enough female CTO guests. We're going to put that up. We do try, okay? We do try. So if there's any female leaders out there, that or whatever diversity that want to be on, that would be great. Now, one of the things that interesting point, the company that are sponsoring this podcast, IT Labs, I've been in many meetings and I'm actually in the minority. Actually, 80% of the leadership are women, which isn't by design. Which I've really got curious around this, because I mean, to me, people are people. I don't, I don't. It's never been a thing for me. But I noticed that I was the only man in the meeting, kind of thing. I thought, so there are companies out there doing that, and I think we do need to speak to encouraging people into these kind of spaces. But so while we're on that topic, is it what is the thing that you've experienced of being, who you are in the tech space? Has it been really difficult? Do you get a lot of pushback? Or
Yes. So you get pushback. I'm not saying that only certain kind of women get pushback. Yeah, everyone get pushback. Like it's not. It's again not based on your performance. Like you get pushback in some of the places where seniors want to take a control. They want to say, "Oh, we are the one. Let's make us like let us make all the decision. You just follow what we are saying you to follow." And that actually happened to me a lot often, like where seniors say, okay, we need to do this, just cascade this information to the all the team members, and then you need to do, um even though like we raised our like concerns that if we do this, this is going to cause some kind of legacy, and this is going to cause some kind of like a scalability issue, performance issue. But all that business cared is like how can we get a get to the market with our competitors first. That's what the business thought about, very limited number of businesses care that we need to have a great kind of technology behind the product that we deliver in terms of performance and the scalability and the kind of in the security wise. But most of the time this is the case. So yes, I want to push back. But again, as a as a as a as a leader, I would say, and as an engineer, when I was an engineer, when I got a pushback, I never stopped. What I did was I just went back, and even I have to skip my manager. I just did that. I went ahead and I said, my managers of my manager, and I said, this is what I think there would be a problem, but I go proper preparation. I just don't go for the sake of having a meeting for 15 minutes and say this is a problem. But of course, you need to explain what is the problem. Why do you see this as a problem? What problem is going to bring when you release that stuff, when you release that product. So you need to go with full preparation, taking a couple of examples, taking a couple of scenarios, and then explain them, do not go totally in a tech. I would say do not go very much techy, go in the terms where business can understand, non-technical, how much you can be in terms of explaining the business.
And I'm curious around creating great products, okay? Because ultimately that's what the customer wants, whether it be a service or a platform or what have you. What do you think is the most underrated and quiet skill in that space of creating great products? Because that's a particular angle in the work that we do.
Mm-hmm. What I think is the most underrated, skills we have when we deliver a product is customer empathy. Because I would say not a fluffy kind of not a fluffy kind. The why is users smashing the keyboard, think about that, and that's what I want. That's what come as a customer empathy, like when engineers understand why users are annoyed, product magically gets better. So I think that is most underrated skills at the moment. Nothing fixes software faster than an engineer watching a real human try to do it.
My yes and to that is, how do we design that into our culture and our activities that happens?
Yes. So so in order to do that, in my past company, I had user experience sessions where we had just talked to a couple of users. Okay, maybe 10 users, and we say, okay, can you please go through the product? And we have those videos for the users, user scenarios, those videos, and we say okay, this is where the user is facing the issue. Let's go and see why majority of people are having the issue in that particular user experience. What is the cause of the problem, and that's when you should narrow it down and try to fix that issue. Building products on top of those products, or building features on top of that is not going to be it's not going to solve the problem. The real problem we need to solve is that fixing what you have already in the market and why you are not getting a consumer engaged. What is actually a problem.
Your description there a second ago, why is the customer smashing the keyboard? I love that because it does feel like that sometimes, especially when the keyboard takes a flight across the garden, out the window. And I think it's really important, this concept of customer centricity. We think, by creating work and delivering products and, deliverables, we're kind of doing our job. But actually, that's part of our job as well, to listen and to what have you. And I've seen some really good examples of engaging customers, including people within the company actually using the product. So they get to experience it and they start to spot the little nuances. But then you've got to have a feedback loop to make sure that gets fed in. Yes. Yeah.
So what happened was in my past company, what I have put a process in place where every Friday all the product and the tech, they'll just allocate half an hour or 45 minutes to go through the app and list on every issues that they have faced, maybe starting from onboarding or starting from registration or login to the onboarding and to to the real kind of like user experience, like a dashboard. Do that and see how is the user experience, because that's when most of the customers comes. That's when you get more kind of users into an app. So have session. So I always make sure that every new person, even they join the company, the first week they should fully dedicate to go through the app platform, go through the product, and try to understand and know what the product really doing. So my intention, and I would like to give this advice to everyone. Please, if you have some new joiners, make sure do not put the new joiner directly into the coding and then do this coding. No, let the person to learn the product first, try to analyze it, try to think how can they make it better, what all the issues they face, because if you look from the fresh eye, you might find some issues which you as a person working in a company does not, don't observe.
Yeah, yes. I'm kind of having a bit of a kind of humorous movie going on in my head here. Just imagine if we could stick one of those where they monitor your neurological pathways in your brain, where the blood is going to the brain. If it's ending up in the amygdala, the kind of like the monkey part of the brain, that the product's not quite hitting the mark. But I think that's what we need, is that feedback loop, as to knowing, if this is friction for the customer, is this taxing them too much? And maybe it does need to be taxing, but maybe there's a possibility there. Maybe there's a gem there. I'm always fascinated when I do use products. I always get very curious as around how they've solved that problem and how they make it easier, and how sometimes they move things around. You're thinking, why did you do that? It's just, I'm confused. I could give you loads of examples, and then it'd become a rant and a confession from TC. But I think that we do need to really think about our customers' friction points, and so that's a really good take on that. So Swarnim, let's jump onto your leadership. We might have covered these topics already, but I've got a set of questions here that I feel like I need to use. So I'll push those into the space. So building and scaling a team is as complex as scaling a platform, okay? If not even more complex, maybe. How do you approach it? What are your tips and tricks around scaling and building teams?
Yeah, so scaling a team really is scaling a platform. I always see it in this way. Like it just like a version, like how kind of a word you use. So the usage spike and sudden everything like is on fire. So my approach is like, hire smart people, give them clarity. Smart people, I don't mean like, who would know everything in the whole world. I meant by the smart people, like who is good in culture voice, and aligned with the culture of your company, because there's no way you would be able to work with a person who is not culturally fit with your company. So first thing, I always see the culture fit. Obviously tech and all that. I know if you are like, if you are having the experience, you would have a knowledge about the tech. So yes, my approach is obviously like hire smart people, give them clarity. What's the clarity? Why you hire them? Remove any kind of a blockers and avoid like building processes that requires PhD to understand. Like literally, I don't want to have a process in place where you need like go to like Google search what this terminology looks like. So don't, just make it very simple process, that anyone can understand. So what I focus on, like I focus on the ownership and also psychological safety, because when engineers are afraid to ask any stupid questions, you are not having any kind of like you don't have a tea. I always feel like you are going to experience a problem. So I always say to my engineering team, please don't think you have a stupid question. Every question, whatever questions comes to your mind, please go ahead and ask. Because if you're going to keep it in your mind, like, you will always be thinking and you will always be nervous or scared about asking those. So that's what I would say a building and a scaling team is very, very complex than building a platform even. Because you need to think a lot of those things.
Good, good. I like that. Again, it kind of speaks to your getting back to basics. This stuff that seems quite trivial, and maybe we're quite flippant about it, but it's really, really important. Yeah, and what we tend to find is that little that little kind of kink in the foundation of not being a psychologist, not being able to ask that question, then we build on top of that, and then we build on top of that, and before we know it, we've got a whole unstable kind of structure that does often kind of like show its there's a cost around it. So I totally believe in that. I always find it fascinating when I'm sat there, and then when I ask a question, because I'm thinking I really don't understand what's going on here, and then everyone else goes, "Oh, I was thinking that as well." So I think it's important. So good.
And I also feel like, one of the things I always want to mention, yes, that, obviously ask many questions you want, because it also gives you clarity what you want to really develop. Because there was one situation where my CEO came to me, Swarnim, we need to develop this and ship it in 2 weeks' time. And I was like, what do you really want to develop and ship? Have you ever are we clear about the requirements? Are we clear about what we need to develop? Just not developing like just for the sake of just developing this and putting it out so it was a messaging system. I said, but why do we need a messaging system? Let's have a clarity behind it. How are going to be measure it? How are going to be monitor it? How are going to monitor the messages? How it's going to go to? What's the underlying technology behind it? We need to understand, get the clarity of all those things before we can even go and build a messaging system, and deliver it. Even the prototype as well. So I asked so many stupid questions to my CEO, but I really want to get the brain out, the information out from his brain, and that, what are the informations that he has, and he wants to do it in terms of this product delivery.
Yes, and it's an interesting point, because I'm an avid leadership. For me is a really important thing, and self-leading is an important part of leadership. And one of the things I find is communication is our act of communicating questions, and we refer to them here as maybe silly questions, but they're not really silly questions, they're just questions. It's like another sense where, by putting questions out into the space, we're getting a feedback back, just like we would be doing with our fingers and with our eyes and our ears. We're causing the system to respond back to us, which then colors the space. So I think it's a really important thing. Questions are beautiful ways of building up the landscape and the picture that we sit in, because as we all know, we are story-making monkeys that make up stories and assumptions, and we need to clear them, and that's what we do. We throw questions in there and we clear them.
Exactly. And one of the statement, I said it to one of the leader, he was the VP of engineering, and I mentioned to him, and I think it's still I really follow it, scaling teams is mostly debugging the humans. So in terms of I would say the technology wise, and humans don't come with stack traces.
Right. Yeah.
So I always say this, just remember this when you are scaling a team.
I like that idea of having a stack. I dread to think what my stack's like.
Yeah, because VP of engineering, you always need, if you need to talk to in the tech side, I always say it's mostly debugging humans, scaling humans,
I feel like getting all comical on a geeky sense around, my stack, and I'm blowing my stack and the pointers to my stack and all this kind of stuff. Hopefully people that aren't techies, hopefully the techies listening to this understand what we're on about. But yeah, we could do a whole kind of joke skit on that side of it. So the other question I have, which kind of touches on what we just talked about, is, how do you foster a culture of day-to-day cooperation between teams? And I think psychological safety is the definite one that you want to have in the space. Is there anything else that we need to add so that teams actually talk to each other?
I always say to the team, firstly, remove the throw it over the wall mind. Then make sure every team share the same goal, not just a Slack channels, So in my experience, I think the cross team, cross cooperation improves the I would say the engineers, products and design. And I feel like if you know what you are solving, the problem, what common problem you're solving, instead of going in a various direction and solving many other things and defending their own kingdoms, I feel like that's that culture we need to have our company, shared same responsibility, share the responsibility, make sure you're working on a similar problem, understand the problem, so yeah, that's what. And in one line, if I have to say one thing, If team needs a meeting just to talk to each other, you don't have a team. You don't have a team. You have a slots. You always say, you don't need a meeting to talk to each other. Literally. You can talk to each other via any kind of a channel. You don't have to have a meeting. And that's what I always say to my team members. Please avoid meeting how much you can, because if you really want to have a meeting in order to talk, yes, for certain kind of a complex things, you want to have a meeting when you are doing some kind of remote whiteboarding kind of thing, but to each other, not really, because, so I always say that.
I think that's a really good point, because especially in the remote working world that we've got in, is I think hopefully we're evolving. I do wonder sometimes when I see examples of this, is that we do need to just talk to each other. We're human beings at the end of the day, and we like talking to talk. And sometimes that, obviously that's related to work, but also it's sometimes just connecting as human beings, and knowing how we are and how we're feeling, and maybe where we're having those challenges, which fits into the psychological safety.
Yes, I agree. I agree. And that's what, no, I'm not denying the fact that you cannot have, generally talk with each other, have that meeting. We have a social activities, social events, stuff like that. But if you're really having a meeting all the time to solve the same kind of a problem, that means you're not having your processes in place. You're not having a standards. You're not talking to your standard. You're not understanding you're not having a great refinement session. You're not understanding the tickets, the features, and all into that session. So I feel like you utilize the time wisely. But yeah, have that particular slot. Talk about yourself, have the social connection, and not about just, okay, this product, this refinement session, we had it, okay, this was the things we find in the refinement session. Yeah, so just utilize the time wisely.
Very wise.
Yeah.
So I'm going to put you now into a time machine. Okay, we're going to step into a time machine. I don't know if you remember that very old film where the man's kind of creating a time machine in his basement. I'm going to go back, and we're going to visit some of your learning points. Okay, in your career. So this is the CTO Confessions part. What is it you'd like to confess about? Some of the things that you'd like to warn yourself about from the past in this space, so we can learn from that.
I want to come up with something I have 3 confession to do. I don't know if you want me to talk about it.
Yeah. That they probably fit into the bill. Yeah.
Okay, so one of the confession I really want to do, and I have done it in the past. That's what I'm talking about it. Um, I would warn myself that hiring fast is not hiring right. And I have done this in the past. I was really busy hiring a lot of people in my team. Oh, we have a great product roadmap. Let's hire as many as people you want, and making a whole business case in hiring. Now, hiring fast is not hiring right. And that culture depth you hurts more than a technical debt. And I always say that, if you're just hiring fast people without thinking if they're culturally fit for the company, that is going to hurt you more than what technical debt you have it in a company. And that really happened, so yeah, learn the lesson from there. Also, anything labeled temporary, usually become permanent. Oh, for this is for temporary. No, it becomes permanent eventually, because you don't go back and check that. You don't focus on this because you think, okay, that is working. Why to spend time on that? Let's spend time on building something new, because company wants to develop something new to be competitive in the market. So yeah, so if someone calls themselves 10x engineer, run, because they are usually 10x cost to the team's energy, I would say utilize that engineer wisely. Um, yeah. So I think one sentence, if I have to say this one of my confession is, culture depth compounds faster than the technical debt.
Wow, like it. Very wise. And you had a third confession.
Yeah. So, and also just one to add on that one, I just thought about that. And the interest rate is brutal as well. Yeah. So I had one confession where in the past there was a situation where I considered heroes in my team, and the way I considered heroes, being honest, I thought, okay, That person is waking up at 2 a.m. and solving the issue for us. That person is always working in the over the weekends, and helping us to solve the issue. That person is a machine. Oh my God, the person is robot. Um, um, that's something I would like to confess that I think if you are categorizing heroes in your team, or if you're categorizing heroes um, in your company, that means you are not having a great technology behind that. You are not having a great framework. You're not having a great process, because why that person has to really go at 2 a.m. in the night and solve the issue for you. So I I I always say that that this is where your system needs heroes. You don't have a system. You don't have a system at all. um I think Nobby celebrate boring infrastructure and predictable outcomes. I think we need to start doing it, rather than celebrating, okay, this is the hero and hero culture. Hero culture literally killed us at some point, and killed me as a leader. And especially in the startup kind of a mode, where we celebrate the heroes.
Yeah, I think that's a really good take. I'm reminding myself of some experiences where I've behaved like the hero, and there's also an addiction around that, becoming the hero. And I guess in a kind of subconscious kind of way, we create those moments where we can be the hero. So yeah, that's a really good shout out. So great confessions. I love that. Okay, and as mentioned many times, this podcast is around learning from other leaders, and I'm sure we're going to learn from them. I've got a question here around your self leadership, and it kind of touches on some of the stuff that you described a few seconds ago, which is, um, can you unplug from the engineering part of you when you're not working? Do you switch off? Any tips around that?
I again, in one of the terminology, in the tech side, I would say unplugging the engineering brain is like trying to gracefully shut down from a whole Kubernetes cluster. Um, if someone can relate to me who is hearing this podcast, possibly in theory, but very, very messy in practice. In theory, yes, but messy in very practice. My only, I would say, real tip, and that also applies to me, is context switching. That just go and cook, go for a walking, go anything that you love, because I love um just drawing, drawing, art, and all that, and cooking as well. I do that. That's how you will do a context switch, and then you will not think about um the tech. Do with anything with people who don't care about architectural or system design, who's not going to ask you, oh, Swarnim, that design we talked about 3 days back, do you have any thought on that? Did you just come up with a plan how we should be designing architectural diagram? It is healthy when someone hears API and thinks you're talking about that in any kind of in a new restaurant. But also feel the best way to unplug is hang out with the people who don't know what the simple zero is. What's the zero? Bug track. I feel like that way you can unplug yourself.
That's a really good life hack. Find people that really don't know anything about that stuff and probably would go completely, blank on that. So that's a really good tip. So thank you for that.
And this also applies to I'm talking about from my side, like technology side, but it applies to anyone who is doing some kind of electronic side. Just talk to the people who does not know electronics, who's not going to talk to you what is capacitor, what is resistor, what this you mix this 2 volt stuff, what it make. I'm just talking about just meet with the people who is not from your kind of sector, where you don't have to think about all the things that you have been doing in working days, I would say. Also, one of the things is when you are on holidays, be on holidays. Do not go and check the slacks, which I often do it, and I feel like that does not cut me off from the work. Just shut down everything, because you are on holidays, and also you're not making your team independent by going and checking the slack and guiding them, because your team is not independent. They are literally dependent on you to succeed, or to release something. So I feel you need to give that boundaries, or you need to set that boundaries and set the culture where your team is independent, even though you're not around, you have some kind of some work to do, but your team still delivers and your product feature delivery still works.
Yeah, I love how you point towards the benefit of doing that as well, to allow teams to grow. It's a little bit like, we've got children, we have to let them. I'm not sure if it's the right analogy, but we have to let them learn by letting go slightly. So I think that's a really good pointer. So as we come towards the closing arc of our time together, I've got some nice warm questions, and one of them is I'm going to pretend to be a genie, the tech genie. Okay, I'm going to offer you a wish. What would you wish for your industry, for your leadership, for the tech space?
One thing I would say is don't scale your system before the business. So you need to have your go ready fit market. You have your business kind of what your business, what do you want to new business? You have the whole kind of plan set, and then you scale the system. Don't you scale the whole we need to have fancy stuff, we need to have this remix, we need to have this kind of a setup. So I would say one of the takeaway I would I would like to state here is don't scale system before the business. Um, yeah, yeah. Because if it slowed us down, that will hurt us. That will hurt our morale. That will also cost us a hell lot of money.
Yes, yeah. So the tech genie in me is saying, is agreeing with you, because we can spend a lot of time, as you mentioned, around stuff like that, direct the energies to what have you. And it's nothing like working on a project which was really sophisticated and what have you, and actually turns out to be a nothing burger, just mitigate that. And it's quite demoralizing. I've worked on projects which are never actually even used, you know, and that's a real kind of kicker, all those well, hopefully not late nights, but yeah, it's quite demoralizing. So that's great. So as we come to the final full stop, I don't know if you've got any other key takeaways. You've had some great ones throughout the podcast. What's the final key takeaway that you'd like to leave our tech leader audience listening to this podcast as a parting gift?
Okay, one of the things I would like to say to all the leaders, whether you are a junior engineer or a senior or even a CTO of the company, any company or if you're working in a company, they don't die because of lack of fancy frameworks, fancy tools, all those Kubernetes clusters, stuff like that. They die because of lack of customers. So think how you are going to have the customers into your platform, first. So think about that first, and then you obviously build, with the customers, putting customers on the top of the place, then build your underlying, I would say, technology. So that's what I would like definitely, say that, because we spent months and months and months building architecture, and then we realize later that architecture is not, bringing the customers into the platform, or not helping the customers to fulfill the real, thing that we would like to obviously help the customers with.
Yeah, I think that's a good full circle to where we started, which is think about the business. So that's a wonderful note to finish on. Thank you for your time. It's been wonderful having you on CTO Confessions.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Izzy, and thank you for this opportunity. I really felt that I had a confession which I never said it to, never get a platform, to speak about it. So thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you for your time.